If you want to learn, there's nothing that can stop you. But if you don't want to learn, then there's nobody that can teach you. Figuring out what would create value for the customer, and then most importantly, create a win-win-win. A win for my potential or existing customer, a win for their customers. If you create the win for those two, then you get an automatic win as well. How do I create credibility and trust so that people want to work with us? How can we work together? How do we do it in a smart way? How do I convince the customer to try it out? Because often a lot of companies have never worked with open banking before, and then it's a lot about educating them and teaching them of how they can work with it, and also what are the benefits of working with it. How can they utilize the information that they would get through us, and how can they build their own business cases? So it's a lot about the supporting of the customers as well.
Welcome to the Pantrium Podcast. Here, there's no fluff and no sales pitches, just real conversations. I'm your host, Christy Christensen, and at Pantrium, we bring together bold, curious founders and leaders to share their stories, their lessons they have learned, and the hard truth behind their success. We are all about challenging the status quo and explore fresh perspectives while focusing on what really matters: people. If you're craving deeper conversations, you're in the right space. So let's dive in. Thank you so much for joining the Pantrium Podcast. I am thrilled to have you here, and I'm looking forward to deep dive into real stories with you. And before each episode, as we kind of deep dive in, I ask our guests to share a little bit about themselves and fun facts. So Sarah, without further ado, what's your fun fact?
I think that a fun fact about me is that I've been writing lyrics previously, writing song texts previously. And I think that culminated in a radio show, Power Hit Radio, in year 2000, where I was writing lyrics to an Eminem song, Slim Shady, and actually won a rappers competition in radio and got to meet Eminem.
No way. You did not expect that from you. That's fantastic. That is truly a fun fact.
It is. And I think why it's a fun one, it's because since then I've been a lot into storytelling, and I've been sharing stories, I've been writing stories, and in business it's a lot about different stories. And for those who know me, they know that I'm often doing public speaking, and that's when you do public speaking, it's a lot about storytelling.
Yes. And speaking of
I think
business,
that started with Eminem and rapping. No rapping anymore, though.
But still storytelling.
Absolutely.
And tell me a little bit more about the storytelling and what you do now when you're saying business and you're doing a lot of public speaking. What problems are you solving for your customers?
Creating understanding, creating engagement, creating curiosity, helping them get an understanding of what is actually open banking and how can you use it, for what can you use it, what are others using it for, and then also pushing the future with telling them what they could be using it for.
And what do you think is the biggest learning in storytelling that you have experienced through your journey, your career?
The biggest learning is that you need to connect with the person on the other side before you can connect a story to what you want to do with them. Because in the end, business is always going to be a lot about the person that you're meeting on the other side or next to you.
And how do you do that?
My take on it is curiosity. I've always been very, very curious in getting to know new people, in getting to know new business models, ways of doing business, learning more about both why, the what, and the how, getting a greater picture and also a deeper sense of understanding, I think.
And when you say a deeper understanding, and you mentioned open banking, open banking might be new for some of our listeners. Can you explain to our listeners what open banking is, and perhaps also a little bit more about the
the business you work for.
Absolutely. So open banking is, in its simplest form, it's a digital way of accessing transactions and transaction lists. For a business case, that could be, let's take the example, I lived in Germany for a few years, and when I moved back to Sweden again, I couldn't get a credit card and I couldn't get any kind of credit limits because I didn't have a credit history. Because in Sweden, it's a lot about what you had last year in your credit scoring, and that's what your credit score is based on. Now, I was sent out, lived in Germany 4 years, and then moved back again. And when I moved back, I didn't have anything at all. If I would have had open banking, the bank or the credit card institute could have looked at my transactions back in Germany, and they could have seen that I was paying my rent every month. I was handling credit cards. I had a decent salary. I was saving. I was investing, and I was managing my finances very well. So I'd be eligible to get a credit card also in Sweden. But as open banking didn't exist back then, I wasn't able to get a credit card. So I was declined by all the different card providers to get a credit card, even my own employer, which was a bank back then. So that's a very classical way of how you can use open banking for lending or for scoring of your behaviors and showing that I'm eligible for a loan or for a credit card or similar. That's on the consumer side. On the business side, it's turning very popular to also add it into your ERP systems, because then you can help your customers with reconciliation and with the bookkeeping of the different transactions and keeping yourself up to date.
And through your career, and now when you're mentioning also living abroad and coming back, what has been some of the biggest challenges through your career?
Oh, many. Leaving Sweden and then moving to Germany and then meeting the differences in culture. That's definitely been a huge challenge. Adjusting my very Swedish ways of working into the very German ways of working. That was a great challenge. But also moving home, realizing that I have now widened my perspective so much. I came home into a very narrow-minded world. It felt like I've been expanding my mindset from Sarah 1.0 to Sarah 3.0, but the world around me stayed in 2.0.
Yes. And how did you navigate that? You know, when you moved into Germany and it was new and you had to adapt, how did you do that in a work environment? What was your learnings?
On the cultural side, I read a lot about the differences in culture, and I used Hofstede a lot, which was a professor who created different cultural dimensions, and then simply just learning and relearning new how to do business. How do you do it? What is accepted? What is not accepted? What is okay to do? What is absolutely not okay to do? Looking back, I've been saying so many funny things in German because of my limited language, and I've been doing so many funny things the Germans have had fun about, but I didn't really understand why it was fun. But it's business life, I guess, when you do business in a culture where you're not 100% home.
And did you see that it also reflected in the work you did towards customers, that your cultural surroundings had changed?
Absolutely. Being Swedish and very non-hierarchical enabled me to move and to meet other people on other levels in a completely different way than the traditional German would enable themselves to do. That also gave huge advantages because it didn't make me afraid of approaching people. I was more using the curiosity in that one. Of course, also when moving back home and then moving into leadership, that's another kind of change where the environment very much turning from a friendly, we're all colleagues and happy times, into the more, who is she? What's she able to do? What's she capable of?
Why do you think that is?
I see that kind of pattern in many places where there is scarce resources. So when you're competing about existing resources, and with resources, I mean money, funding, I mean the possibility to hire people. I mean, everything around what you could enable. When it's a growing environment like I am in right now, there is never an issue in who does what or who takes what. Today, I'm very much realizing I really, really enjoy the growth. And I really, really enjoy the part of being an inspiration around open banking and speaking a lot about open banking and bringing that to more people. I'm having the vision of bringing open banking into each and every company across Europe. And that's a very big and a very bold ambition. I would never have been possible to have that same kind of big and bold ambition where I was previously, because the growth is not the same. And if you come with that kind of bold ambition, then everyone knows that you will try to get more resources in the bank, and then more people will try to stop you from that because they see that if I succeed, I will take some of their resources because of the limitation around the resources.
Now, when you mentioned you have gone from corporate world to a scale-up world, what would you advise someone who might be looking to do the same switch in their career?
Oh, just do it. Go, go, go. Just do it. I spent myself, I think, 5 months with a career coach, figuring out what I really wanted to do. Then by accident came across Enable Banking, or they found me and we started talking. And I realized this is exactly what I've been looking for. Well, before you go, figure out what you would want to do, and then go do it. Don't be afraid of it being different than what your current setting would be. It's going to come with completely different challenges. It's going to come with completely different opportunities. I think if you want to learn, there's nothing that can stop you. But if you don't want to learn, then there's nobody that can teach you. So if it's something that you really want to do, go do it.
Yeah, second that. Leading into this conversation, you and I, we spoke a lot about collaboration, cross collaboration across the ecosystem. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those case studies that you have or are working on today?
In my world, everything is about innovation by combination. That means that you bring in open banking and then you combine it into or with something else. One of the recent cases that we've been doing has been on the loyalty side. And with the Scandinavian Airlines, SAS Eurobonus, we have done a proof of concept with them where we have been enabling them to create a credit card module or a credit card chooser or a recommendation tool where I can connect my bank accounts into it. And then I get a hyper-personalized offer of what that credit card would offer me if I would go and choose it. So let's say I had a bank credit card previously. Let's say I had a Nordea bank card and I had a spending of 400,000 Swedish kroners on that one, 40,000 euros equivalent. Then by connecting that card to the loyalty engine of Scandinavian Airlines, I would get the offer that would tell me, Sarah, with the spending habits that you have currently, if you continue those habits, then for the next 12 months, you would earn 300,000 bonus points with us. And that would enable you to go to New York 4 times in business class. So it's a very, very hyper-personalized offer based on exactly your own behaviors. And I think that's something that we're going to be able to see more and more in the market going forward, where it's going to become possible to get more hyper-personalization in different services, especially when you then use open banking. We're also doing some exciting things around fraud, enabling companies to identify fraud cases in the underwriting process before when you're trying to get a loan or a credit, to figure that one out. We're doing a lot on the B2B side, both with treasury cases and with ERPs, again, to enable the companies to get instant overview of their flows. So there's a lot of different cases that we've been doing. Some of them where we've been really surprised of how good things are working. Some of the cases where I've very early been seeing that this is going to turn interesting. And also many cases where I'm realizing that theoretical hurdle of giving access to your bank accounts or to your credit cards through open banking, that hurdle is actually not very big. So we're working with another really interesting case where you're able to connect your bank accounts again, and then they see your spending and where you've been shopping. So for example, I went shopping yesterday with H&M, Hennes and Mauritz, and then today I get 3 questions on how was my actual experience with that shopping. And instead of responding to the H&M app saying, yeah, my shopping experience was good, like you always do, you instead answer truthfully. And they are then able to present this in front of agencies and in front of H&M in real time to tell them, how happy were your customers yesterday? And people are actually connecting their bank accounts. And this is a really trending app now in Sweden called Again. People are doing it because when they answer these 2-3 questions, they get 1 or 2 euros kickback just by answering these questions.
And it's really interesting now when you're also referring to these benefits, right? That when you do find a good collaboration or a good partner and you can together create a better solution for the customer, there's also an uptake, there's an adoption. And of course, the financial benefit of doing something is of course a great incentive. Before coming to the end solution that you're presenting to the customer, what was some of those challenges and learnings through that journey early on in those partnerships?
I think a big challenge, of course, in the beginning is trust. Why should they want to work with me? Why should they want to work with us at Enable Banking? I think the first one, how do I create credibility and trust so that people want to work with us? And then the second place about the creativity on how can we work together? How do we do it in a smart way? How do I convince the customer to try it out? Because often a lot of companies have never worked with open banking before I've met them. And then it's a lot about educating them and teaching them of how they can work with it, and also what are the benefits of working with it. How can they utilize the information that they would get through us, and how can they build their own business cases? So it's a lot about the supporting of the customers as well, because often they don't understand what I'm bringing to them in the first meeting, but then perhaps more so in the second meeting.
What would you say was the most surprising when you are educating your potential partners, creating that trust, enable them to trust that they should choose an unknown or less known brand versus a very worldwide known brand? What were some of those surprising findings in that journey?
How personal business is. It's about connecting with the person on the other side. And then, of course, having a very good offer, and also what would the person on the other side find valuable? How do I not only create value with the solutions that I'm coming with, but how can I package that with additional content around it? Be it either through my experiences, be it through previous learnings that we've done, be it with a wild idea of mine, but figuring out what would create value for the customer, and then most importantly, create a win-win-win. A win for my potential or existing customer, a win for their customers. So creating value in both those two steps. Because if you create the win for those two, then you get an automatic win as well. So then it turns into the win-win-win.
I like that. Win-win-win. In that, how much time and effort do you put into understanding your potential partner or customer's business model?
A lot. And I think this is where I've been benefiting from working with a wide range of different companies in my corporate career that I had previously. Having met large companies, medium-sized companies, everything, and then seeing how they're working, what they're doing, and then taking it step by step.
And bringing it back to what you mentioned earlier about storytelling and your Eminem journey, what does storytelling mean in this process and your framework when it comes to partnerships and cross collaboration?
I would say it means a lot, because if I'm able to put myself into the shoes of my partner, then I'm able to tell them a story that they would be able to understand, digest, and then also inspire them into the action where they would find me and my solution valuable into their solutions and into their product. Because if I'm able to communicate the value of my services, then there's often also an understanding, and then making it super easy, super simplified, trying to use their own vocabulary.
With that, there's so many nuggets in here. If you were to boil it down to someone who sits in a similar situation, or looking to collaborate with new partners to deliver better services for their customers, what would you advise them to do and focus on?
Curiosity. Many people don't dare to ask questions because they're afraid to ask a stupid question. And in Swedish, we often say, sorry for my stupid question. But in my world, nothing is a stupid question, because open banking is a fairly new thing, especially when you look to how to really implement it in B2B solutions, especially because they haven't been around for that long. So in that sense, it's a lot about enabling curiosity and sharing stories in a way that are digestible, that are understandable.
And when we're looking ahead, and we like challenge people's perspective and viewpoints,
Mm.
what would you like to see change in the industry?
Oh, I think there are a lot of things that can become better in the industry. If I speak about the very thin open banking vertical that I'm operating in, there's a lot of room of improvement, but then that also means that there's a lot of work for us to do in order to make that situation better. I think in any product's life cycle, in the beginning, it's about explaining, speaking about what can be done. How can we do it? It's about educating, inspiring. And then you reach a point where companies know what they can do with it. And then it's more about, okay, so how do we do it? It's a lot about the good old classic why, what, and how. In the beginning, you have to explain why should you have a look at this? What would the benefits be for you if you do this? And then it goes into, okay, so we want to do it. We have an understanding of why we want to do it. Then it moves into, okay, so what do we want to do? And then in the final phase, how do we want to do it? So first explaining to them why should they look at it and understand it. And then into the next step, okay, so now we understand it and what should we do about it? And then when you've been deciding what you should be doing about it, then the final step goes into how should we do it? And I love to be a part of the journey in all these three, both in the inspirational part of why should we have a look at open banking, and then into what should we do with it, and then into how should we work in it.
What do you think will define the next 5 years within open banking?
Exploring new niches, bringing it into verticals where it hasn't been before, continuing to push borders of what can we do with it and how can we work with it, be it with big retailers or be it with aviation carriers, or be it with tech companies, or be it with a big production manufacturing company. The different niche cases are numerous. And I think that's what's making it so much fun, because it's not only about the tool that a bank could use. There's numerous different kind of companies that could work with it and benefit from it.
Are there one of them you think are gonna be the first mover, where we will see a use case that are not yet utilized today with open banking that everyone should kind of keep an eye on for within the next 5 years?
I think that's in loyalty, explaining to the customer what's in it for me if I work with you. What's in it for me if I go shopping with the department store A or the department store B? What's in it for me when I give my access to the data to you? How do you give me value for it? So if you're able to really answer what's in it for me, I think then that's when you have a huge advantage into the future, and where you're also able to really hyper-personalize different services.
In the spirit of staying curious and open, are there anyone you are following that inspires you?
Oh, many different people. I could probably name a long list of that, and it's very much depending on what the different markets are, to keep yourself updated on what is going on. On the open banking, I think Mary Walker and the open banking world that she's been opening up to on a global level has been very inspiring. I've had a lot of my previous colleagues from Nordea Bank moving into different ventures that I find very interesting. I've been following different niches of open banking and how they go about their journeys.
As we are wrapping up, do you have a leader that have made a big impression on you through your career?
I've been, how should I put it? I've been picking the raisins out of the buns with a lot of different leaders, where I've seen that they're really inspiring in different things. And if I look to public speaking and the storytelling, I have two previous managers at the bank that I've been very inspired by throughout the years. And that's been my previous manager, Gunnar Berger, who was the main responsible of open banking, Sofia Kander, who is now the general manager of Microsoft Sweden. Both of them previously in Nordea, that I've been taking a lot of inspiration from. Then on the sales side, being able to create trust, I've been very inspired by my own uncle, who's had a long career in the sales process and with whom I did a lot of traveling when I was a child myself, joining him in different ventures. So a lot of different persons picking up one or two, either features or knowledges or experiences or strengths, and looking how I can learn from that.
I think that is a beautiful way to end. I know we're running out of time and we could have continued endlessly. Sarah, I have really enjoyed it. So many nuggets through this session. It's been a pleasure. And again, thank you so much for joining the Pantrium Podcast.
Thank you so much.
If this episode gave you something to think about, I'll be really grateful if you could share this with your LinkedIn network. And to make sure you don't miss out on any new episodes, simply follow Pantrium wherever you are listening or watching. And just a note, the opinions and views shared by our guests are entirely their own and don't necessarily represent the businesses they work for. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, bye for now.